I'm not a butthead.
No, not a butthead. What's good? Welcome back to Agitator. We're here with not the butthead, professor, author, super smart person. The butthead was supposed to be me. Charlene Elsby. We're talking violent faculties, the mad scientist, philosophical torture porn novel of the century.
Ooh,
And I don't say that with any sort of what's the word? See, this is what I meant. I'm definitely the butthead. Can't
I
even
can be
remember
the butthead
words.
if you want to share.
Do what?
If you want to share the responsibility for being butthead,
Okay,
like
okay, yeah, yeah.
you
But
can
no,
feel
I really dug this book. The Broken River guys have been hyping it for a while, or all of your work. Simmons and Grant are definitely huge fans, and I value their opinion, of course, because I think they're the fucking best. But it's one of those symptoms of the times where I'm jaded towards a lot of modern literature, and so they're like, "This is great," and I'm like, "It just came out. All right, well, we'll get around to it." And they're just consuming your shit like crazy,
yeah, they
and
got a
I'm
book
like,
club
"This."
going.
Yeah, they do. So I was like, I need to join in on this shit. And you had dropped by the table. You had dropped violent faculties by the table up in AWP when we
I did.
crossed paths up there. And I was like, well, this is just calling out to me now. So we got to make this happen. And holy shit, it belongs up there with books from a better time, because anybody who shares my same sense of jadedness towards modern literature needs to make an exception for sure. I truly think it's the best mad scientist book that I've read.
Aw, I fucking appreciate that. I fucking love Simmons and Womack too. And yeah, they were talking up the Broken River. You were there at VoidCon too. And I
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and yeah, we traded some books there. I think that's where I gave Simmons the Violent Faculties. That was gonna come out. Uh-huh. Yeah, fucking good times. And then, yeah, just the whole Broken River crew. It's just, well, you know how you get one recommendation and then it spreads.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's hopefully that's the way it should happen. That's the way I'm liking how Elle does with her book club, who also edited this one. Um, Rare Candy, the podcast, they do a gain of fiction on their Substack that's been really helpful getting people into reading and shit. Like I like seeing that because there's no a lot of people Instagram or book talk the books, but don't really dive into why you should read it or whatever. And so I like anything, and if I can be a part of people getting into the right shit, then absolutely want to be a part of that. What if, since we already brought up we've crossed paths at VoidCon AWP, how's your experience been traveling for book stuff? With what do you think of American book tour versus whatever you do up in Canada?
Oh shit. Okay. Um, how do I be nice to both of our countries?
You don't
Uh,
gotta be nice. You're on agitator. We ain't ever nice.
uh, well, I was in the US when I started writing books. I was in Indiana for 6 years. So I was down there and there was no book shit going on in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Um, and then I moved up to Canada and got a book published in Canada that nobody reads. The literary scene up here is a lot less youthful,
Hmm.
a bit more traditional. And so I couldn't really break in there when I tried when I was starting because they thought it was a little too much. I actually got an editor responding to me saying I should try Europe. But some of the Americans are a little more accepting of non-traditional narratives, perhaps.
Right.
And I'm not saying these are global truths, haha, global, because we're talking about geography. But for the most part, like I do all my shit in America.
That's
Um,
crazy because I've gotten that Europe thing too. I've seen it evidenced as well. A lot of even listeners of the show, a lot are from Australia, Europe. It's like, come on, America. That's nice that we're at least doing better than Canada though. We gotta stay we gotta stay on top of that.
right? What's with all your Puritans in America? I feel like there is like a hard religious right that's just gonna like come out at the most inopportune times.
It's so weird that that still applies to art because um I feel like America's one of America's big characteristics from my experience growing up, and part of it is degeneracy. So Puritanism is a strange one. And I've grown up in only red states, and I mean in all honesty, I'm much more right leaning than left, the but I still that element of degeneracy is where I've never fucked with the conservatism puritanism side because I'm like, what are you talking about? We ride around on four-wheelers drunk shooting at shit. Like we're what is this facade of social decency that, must cover up, especially things that are like they can't hurt anyone, like art.
Mhm.
The fuck is up with that? Like it's a book, it's not gonna hurt you. I mean it might.
All right. Maybe that's just my Indiana experience talking. There was a
Oh
lot
no,
of
it's definite. I mean, it's definitely a thing. I just think it's more a veneer than a, you know what I mean, like a cosplay that Americans do for some reason. Pretend that everything's, we're supposed to be polite, moral, whatever. And I mean, I think we
that's
should.
our
We should.
reputation. That's the Canadian reputation. Polite and moral and good, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, buddy. Hey, guy. I've been working with a Canadian and trying not to give him too much hell for being Canadian.
I mean it's hard, right? I'm sure it'll be fine.
Hard. Yeah, you'll be fine. One of the but on the subject of dangerous books though, um my biggest criticism of modern literature is probably how toothless it is. And I don't mean that it doesn't go hard, because there's plenty of extreme horror things that are just full of just gross, abhorrent shit. But it's that it to me a lot of it feels toothless, and that it doesn't commit. It always has to have this tinge of irony or something in there letting you know that the author doesn't feel the way that, like, there's all this equivocation cushioning the, hypnosis of the story you're being told, and instead of you being able to be submerged into it, it's all this like, just to let you know, the author doesn't feel this way about these things that are happening. It's like, shut up, let me enjoy the
Maybe he
book,
is
you know.
tired.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Disclaimer part where they're like, don't worry, none of this is real. Yeah, I can see why that'd be a problem. It's gonna take you out of the moment.
Yes, but that's not I didn't find any of that in Violent Faculties. I was completely submerged to the point where, by getting to the author page, because the sort of gist of Violent Faculties is a professor of philosophy is let go due to budget cuts, and continues sort of her own jigsaw Dr. Moreau like experiments um separate from, the facilities and funding, and just sort of goes the indie route of conducting experiments on what is a soul by, like, cutting girls open and seeing if boys hired to ejaculate into their newly manufactured orifices will keep them alive. Things like that.
Yes, that was the point. Yeah, you got it. It's perfect.
with
And you
you
learn
with you
something.
Oh yeah, you learn a lot. Oh, it's legitimately a philosophy book. I would say, like, there's so much, the fiction, the torture, it's all a vehicle for a lot of ideas to be explored. And in that way, I think it functions as uh, a nice philosophy text alongside being a gruesome horror story.
All of the philosophy is shit I was teaching with footnotes. The footnotes are real.
The footnotes. Yeah, I love the footnotes as an aesthetic touch, and as a just having more to dive into, because it's also a slim book. It's like 144 pages. It's a fast, like, kind of thriller, psychological torture porn, because it's definitely it's gruesome as shit, but it's not as interested in how far can it go with the graphic depictions, and it's more like this over the top violence is told so somewhat not just
Yeah.
clinically, because
Oh,
the narrator has an emotion. The narrator has, like, but her emotion comes from intellectual curiosity. So it's like this excitement, curiosity towards her experiment. And that's where it's not just cold, but it is, there's a level of detachment where all of these people they're just subjects.
well,
So do what?
well, yeah, you need that level of detachment. And I don't know if it's like stronger in philosophy or in like other disciplines where they're actually like cutting up the dead bodies. But you got to detach yourself from the subjects. But yeah, I think you just tapped into something there. I think the joy does come from like the freedom of thought and the kind of conclusions one can come to, measuring, not measuring, using this extremely violent method. But it's not about the violence. It's about the fact that right, so I was going through it at the time. I was, a professor and they cut my department and I was making these arguments on a daily basis that philosophy is fucking important. It is life or death and you need to like quit talking about us like we're just like some form of literature or something else. I don't know. Um, when, the way people think and the ideological conclusions that they come to do result in violence and death.
Mhm.
Huh. So yeah.
Yeah, towards each other and towards themselves. I have my personal diagnosis. I don't have any doctor's degrees, but my personal diagnosis on the downfall of Western society has been atheism, basically a belief in nothing. And so I definitely see the value in philosophy, people exploring idea, what is the soul, what, not just is God, and then what is God, and then who are we. And I mean, these are all questioning your own humanity, what that means to be human. I think is part of what keeps us conscious of being human. Otherwise, it's like we have this humans might be the only, assuming if we're animals, if we're, we're some kind of physical being on earth along with the other animals. But uh one thing that separates us from non-speaking animals is also this existential dread, this, how this need for validation of our existence. And I mean, what is philosophy if not the exploration of that, right? Or am
Yeah,
I
you
wrong?
can't get out of it. You can't get out of philosophy just by negating the value of humans or the soul or the existence or whatever, because that's also a philosophical stance that has to be defended with claims that does impose a value on everything we are and everything else that is. And it kind of does also recommend a way of being in the world. Um, which is how I think a lot of people get into philosophy, is looking for guidance for how to behave, how we are meant to get by and live the happiest lives we can. But yeah, existential dread might be the defining characteristic of what it means to be human. And I wonder if that's because we think too much. Like, uh I'm talking about in that part, the rational part of the soul. It's
Mm.
supposed to take precedence over the appetitive part, right? The food and fucking part, and then the spirited part where we're just feeling and emoting. We have, you know, angry responses to things. And then the rational part. Because I don't know, existential dread, it kind of feels like a sentiment, but I think it comes from a bit of neurosis. Are we thinking too much to be happy? Tell me, Kelpie, are we?
I, I think thinking is good. So I don't think, well, yeah, it's one of humanity's many sort of conundrums, is that or one of our paradoxes is we think too much and we think too little at the same time. I think that the existentialism is sort of the I have a chicken and an egg question for you that I
Let's
want to,
go.
what do you think came first? Because I'm not quite sure what I think, but this is where I think a lot of the existentialism, the wrestling with that comes from, is do you think the idea of God came first or humans? So like, is being human, did we create God in a desire to be God-like, or is humanity an experience that God created for itself?
Damn. Okay. Um, I'm gonna need a disclaimer because I have a freaky interpretation of what God means, and it's not gonna be the man in the sky. Um,
I think a lot of us are beyond that one.
but there are divine aspects to the natural world that, I mean, without us existing as humans, it might not be possible to have an idea of those things. But that doesn't mean that we made the idea or we created it, because we also have the capacity to go out in the world and recognize things that are already there. So, these things in the world that are there for us to discover might pre-exist us, but we wouldn't have the idea of them until humanity was created. That's my standard response to that question.
No,
Are
that's
you?
sort of that's sort of if the tree falls in the woods, the whole does it make a sound thing. Where does sound come from? It's all perception. This is why we're so full of existential dread, because thinking just leads to more thinking.
I'm going to double down on that too. So, um, if there is an essential difference between us and the other animals, that we are capable of abstract thinking. Uh, or, or Is the difference between us and the rest of nature just more of a spectrum? Because I do see animals like thinking logically and reasoning things out. I wonder if they have a perception of a hierarchy of existence. Do they have organized religion? I don't think so.
I wonder
But
if they're closer to I wonder if it's because we're so high on the food chain, we don't have really natural predators beyond weather.
hmm,
Uh, that I wonder if it is all survival based instinct that is trumping the majority of abstract thinking. Because a lot of you see different behaviors in animals in captivity versus out in the wild, and that alone is like, well, why would they act any differently if they act on this set core, set of rules? If they just act on pure instinct, why would they behave any differently if you take them out of a certain environment? uh if you make a gorilla comfortable and all of a sudden it learns to crochet, it's like, well, okay, then how far away are we from our manners of thinking?
this is where I'm going now as you're talking. What kind of fucking cruel twist is it that as humanity, we're the best creature, we're the good creature, we have morals, we have ethics, we think rationally, we have abstract thought, and just happen to be the highest predator?
Hmm.
Or do those things just naturally go together, which is what I'm hearing when you're speaking?
That the ability to think abstractly puts us up at the top.
Is there something about being a predator and thinking that is there some connection there?
Hmm.
Like, yeah, we're also the best, but we are also kind of the worst in terms of
Yeah.
speed.
Yeah, well, that's whenever you're known as being like the top. Like that isn't that where the probably where the saying comes from, is like being the baddest. You're not the goodest. Oh, you're the best. No, I'm the baddest.
You think we only got a reputation for being the best species because we like ate all the other ones?
All the other ones meaning they're in our
All the other
digestible diet plan, or like the other humanoid-esque species.
what I'm thinking in the background here is you're kind of going towards a Nietzschean theory where the strongest should be conceived of as the best, as opposed to the theories I put forth where it's like the moral good or the most rational. And I want to put those things together.
Try and put the strongest with the most moral, and the most ethical. So you're questioning is whether those can be both, if the most moral and ethical could be the strongest.
Um, I'm trying to get you to say that being a predator is the ultimate goal humanity can achieve. I'm trying to draw that out using logic in a Socratic fashion.
Well, I could just say it. Yeah, no, I'm trying. I'm thinking.
Oh,
Uh, this is fun too. This is fun. This is why we
it's fun.
need. This is why we need philosophy,
Uh-huh.
because, uh, hmm, if I were to think that, then that would mean that maintaining that level of the hierarchy is one of humanity's top priorities. And then would that mean that I possess the belief that life's purpose is a very material one because it's about surviving and dominating?
Yeah, I'm not sure that dominating has anything to do with surviving.
I don't.
Survive. And I don't,
Well, is dominating not a I'm sorry, it cut you out right there. What was the last thing you said?
you're thinking of dominating as like the thing that's best at surviving?
Well, is it not a tactic of survival to try and reach the top and maintain that position?
Hmm. I think we phrase it that way a lot. It's definitely a concept running around out there. But I don't need to be the best to survive. There's lots of people surviving.
That's true. I'm testament to that. I've not been at the top of many things. I'm still making it.
We're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
So what is that push to make it then if domination is separate from survival, then what is the drive to make it, and what is it? Is it survival, or what are we more heading in the direction towards? What are we pulled towards
Right?
to keep going?
Becoming the best human we possibly can. The question swimming around in my head is, what does that mean? Does it mean you're morally good? Does it mean you're the most rational, thinky thing person in the world? Or does it mean that you are the highest predator? What's a good human?
I think my opinion is somebody who leaves something of value for the next ones to keep going, which a, a lot of times could fall in line with the moral and ethical side, but a lot of times could uh, circumvent the constraints of the moral and ethical side, but is definitely not focused on a pursuit of dominance or hierarchy,
We're,
because a lot of those ideas, a lot of the value, um, I think, is subjective and malleable, and dominance requires a much higher adherence to rigidity in thinking and approach and everything.
I think that's cool.
Hell yeah.
You're thinking of value as something that's like useful for other people. And it's selfless in a way where like you're telling me that the purpose of your life is something that's might be achieved long after you're dead. So
Yeah,
it's for your own sake.
that's where my personal ambitions come from, because I've uh speaking of hierarchy, I've started life so far down on the totem pole that reaching a pinnacle is less of a concern than building a higher uh building a higher ground, a better foundation for generations to follow, my kids, their kids, so on and so forth. Not just in material in like financial stability, that of course, but in what kind of what kind of world am I a part of creating for them?
Mm.
What what are the ideas they're being born into? Um what is the meaning? Because I guess, I mean, meanings can maybe vary for different eras. What is the meaning of life in the medieval times versus what is the meaning of life in the 1960s? What's it, and now what's it today?
Depends for whom. Are we talking about the royalty or the normal people?
Do you think that's always going to be a divide between thought is class?
I had this explained to me once, and I always wonder at it. this theory that we only got to start doing philosophy because someone created the concept of currency, and then old Greek men could save enough money that they didn't have to work and they could just think all day.
uh I think that's a little ridiculous because I think all day and you don't have to sit down to think.
Right? And I do a lot of my thinking while doing mindless tasks.
Right.
And so, yeah, when I heard that theory, it's like, okay, it seems to make sense with the history of texts that were passed down to us. Like all of the texts from the past or come from people in the higher classes whose books survived. But that doesn't mean that other people weren't thinking. And it's kind of a,
They had the luxury of putting it down.
exactly, it's kind of a classist opinion to think that people who don't have money aren't thinking.
I've always thought that. I get into it with a lot of people from higher education because especially through the wild west of the internet, uh, it's always assumed the more you tease out people's beliefs and the sort of the ones who hold uh, who wave a sort of social justice kind of flag and want to speak on behalf of certain people. I'm like, by your definitions, I'm part of a class of people you're trying to speak on behalf of. And where we're butting heads is these people are always assuming that, oh, well, poor people aren't smart enough to think about any of this shit that we're arguing about. It's like, I don't have the luxury of articulating it fully or the time to maybe draw, like, write it all out all the time, invest my full time to it. But we think along the same lines. We ponder a lot of similar shit.
Right? And that makes me want to tear down the hierarchy and just reconceive of powerful people as essentially the same kind of meat sack as we are. But yeah, as you were talking, it just reminded me of this. Like the first week I started as a professor, they ran a workshop on how to deal with working class students. And they like developed these methods that they were going to teach to us. And I'm like, hey, that's me. It's like I'm getting a lecture on how to deal with me.
I would love to see that guidebook.
Oh
Uh,
man. And it was just like simple shit. Like, yes, if someone is poor, they might have a job and go to school at the same time. You should know this. Uh,
so where did all the I'm not I'm not familiar whatsoever with higher education. I don't have any
okay.
higher education. Where does all the budget constraint come from? Is it, not enough people to pay to go fetch the bodies to run experiments on, or
No, there's lots of people. It budget troubles tend to come from the government. State funding has been going down, federal funding has been going down, and
yeah.
then try to make it up by taking more students and charging students more money
Mm,
and like developing like even some predatory practices to try and get people to just come to the university. And yeah, um
that's obviously got to have an effect on the academia itself too. Whenever you have people like, hey, come on, come to this school. It's like, okay, if I come to that school, what you teaching my kid? How about, and then a lot of investors always want to have influence.
yes, yes, they do. Yes, they do. So then funding gets prioritized into whatever area the investors are looking for. So where I was teaching, they actually had an advisory board of local businessmen who would tell them, what kind of degrees they thought these kids should have in order to be the best employees they could be at their companies. And I'm like, you're just making these kids pay for their own work training. And then they're going to go and be loyal employees at your company. It's like, I know what you're up to.
That's kind of how it all happened. I mean, I've seen it happen, how, people are sort of sold this, uh sort of the way they're sold to go into the military because we need bodies. They're like kind of sold this like, hey, you want a better life, go to school, pursue college and all of this, and then they get degrees, and then they go and work at Dow where
Yep.
I've worked. I'm like, I don't have any degree. Like, hey, what's up? They paid for my training to get through the door. It seems like you spent a lot of years throwing the family money to get yours.
Yeah. Well, it changes the nature of the university too. Like it's supposed to be somewhere you can go and like think lofty thoughts and like learn things about the universe. But if it becomes something that you're doing solely for like to get a job, that changes how the university is structured and where the money goes, which is what happened to us. Like it was a campus that was marketed as having, come here and you'll have upward social mobility. So you want to become a nurse or an engineer, and then you'll make more money. And there was less interest in figuring out like the nature of humanity, even though when people came and took my classes, like that's what they like were interested in.
Mhm.
It's like people don't work doing the things they're interested in. We accept that like a job is just a thing you do to survive now. And if you have, something you like, you do it on your own time. But yeah, now I'm working in a job that just it requires a bachelor degree. So
You're overqualified.
I got a little overqualified there. And I'm making more money than I used to.
It's, the value, we place too much emphasis on a monetary value being attributed to the things that we do. Whenever, okay, you're going to be a doctor. Why? Well, because we need doctors and because that's a good paying job. So it'd be great for you and your family. What kind of doctor would you be, though, if everything you do is just based on the pursuit of a degree that secures you this job that you go to because you need the money? But why do you want to be a doctor? Why do you want to help people? Do you want to help people? Do Are people good? Like, you need uh you got to, if you're allowed a place to think about, to wrestle with the big questions of your own soul, of humanity, of whatever, then that trickles into every other facet of life. I think. I think it's a very simple argument.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be a good person.
Right.
And yeah, it's a dangerous logic here where you turn people into just a product, things with a use value, like a person whose output exceeds their input such that they are profitable to have around.
There's a
Never,
part. Do what?
nevertheless, that's what's happening in higher education.
Well, there's a there's a lot of parts in Violent Fact. Well, literally the entire book jumped out at me. Every single page, I was like, okay, I gotta quit bookmarking because it's the whole fucking book. But one that really stood out was the area of questioning whether harming a human
Mm.
is in itself unjust, or unjust isn't the word in there, but it is in itself wrong. We have to put all of these, we have to and the abortion was the perfect um basis for that argument, because if human is a modifier in a sense of something like a human fetus, and the way you put it in the book is like, well, nobody cares if you destroy a human mannequin. It's just, it's a modifier of this thing. It's the shape of something. It's the adjective. It's not the noun. It's not you're human. It's you're a type of, you're a human type thing, and therefore a
And a lot of fetuses look alike.
lot of people kind of look
Oh,
alike too.
yeah.
It's funny. I have I've been told several times that you look just like so and so, and I'm like, well, I appreciate you looking beyond the obvious face tattoos. That, like, if I look, but I look like your brother, huh? When's the last time you seen your brother? Uh, but that I wanted to ask that, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's cool to harm? Not just cool. Do you think there's exceptions? Do you think we always have to rationalize uh the human element? Like, say for Hitler, do we need to define Hitler as beyond, he's inhuman at that, like anybody on that level is inhuman, or or do you know what I mean? Like, before getting to a point of uh we have to stop this, we have to harm this thing, eradicate it,
Right.
do you think we first have to deem it inhuman?
I don't think we do. And I mean, like, you could argue that the problem with Hitler is that that's what he did, was deem people inhuman and then as an excuse to harm them.
Right.
And so, like, just applying that same logic to Hitler as an excuse to kill him. Um, yeah, the thought experiment in that chapter, and I fucking love how they let me get away with having chapters that have absolutely no plot whatsoever. It's just like the discussion of ideas. Can we kill humans? We don't. I mean, there are so many examples of us killing humans, and we don't have to first dehumanize them. Or I guess, oh, there is a lot of tendencies like that. And now I'm thinking of like war,
Well, a lot, yeah, a lot of propaganda has a dehumanizing element to it.
right?
These mongrels, these, demonic entity, terrorist organizations, or some kind, they have like a tone of demonic, you know, occultism to them in the way that they're shown. It's not just other dudes with guns on the other side. It's, no, this evil entity.
Yeah. So what's fucked up about that is the fact that they're trying to do something so bad under the guise of morality. It's like they still have this need or want to be on the moral side. And it's like, we're not killing humans, we're eliminating a threat. And I do think it's an excuse. I don't think you can like actually look at a human and say that's not a human. It's like, it's not a human, what is it? Um, so there's some bad faith in there. It's it's an argument that people choose to believe in order to hurt something. And so I think the lesson learned there is that we do want to hurt humans,
Mhm.
despite the fact that all of our ethics is based on this one ultimate claim that it's supposed to be like it's wrong to hurt humans. How do we avoid that? Um, but we do want to. We want to harm them. So we're
It's holding two beliefs that, like, yes, there's a, on this track, which is the track of homeland security, the track of uh you know, providing for my family, defending my country, and then this other track of I am a person and I have, you know, it's where PTSD stems from, where you when those tracks come together and you're like, I do want to hurt you, and then there's like a part of you that, like, do you think it's inherently in us that we can't even, we might have a desire to hurt but lack an ability to directly, like, approach that when we're approached with a reflection of ourselves, basically when we're coming face to face with our own species, and it's there, so that desire exists, but first we have to sort of cover up the mirror in order to go through with it.
Do we? All right, I've got two arguments swimming in my head right now. One, I'm not trying to make any arguments about whether we should or should not kill people, but the fact that we always have to take recourse to this argument that maybe it's the best thing to do means that, like, we don't have cures for things there isn't a disease for. And now I'm going Nietzsche. This The whole application of ethics and morality and the fact that they have to maintain this script whenever somebody gets hurt and like, oh, well, it wasn't a human anyway, means that we do seem to want to hurt people. Okay. Do we have to put up the veil, or, and this is what I'm thinking about, there's a little part of Freud where we hate things that are similar to ourselves. And that occurred to me when you were talking about, this guy's brother who you look like. It's like we don't like other things that we think are stealing our identities.
Mm.
So if something is too similar to us, we also don't like it. So I don't know. Maybe there's an interplay there where I want to be the only human. But I have to maintain the script that if I do want to eliminate the rest of humanity, it has to be for a good and moral purpose.
Do you think most of humanity is good?
Oh, fuck no. Have you
do you think do you think do you think we have an inherent goodness, or that we do you think most people are striving to be good? Like, do
Yes,
they think they're good?
yes, absolutely. And we have these like pure moments of sublime good that, for a while make you believe in humanity and that it's not just trash. Um, but like, yeah, have you met people? They're not good all
No,
the
no.
time.
Often walk around looking over my shoulder just for anybody. I don't need to be in a familiar place where I know I've got enemies. It's just people in general.
Right? Isn't
Uh,
that the idea of stranger danger? Like people you don't know are probably bad.
which is another, those dual instincts, right? Those, like, survival and curiosity, which kind of go against each other, because, if curiosity killed the cat, then maybe you should, if your sole goal is survival, you'd want to kill that curiosity. But humans navigate the world in an interesting way in which we try to remain, or the best of us, I'd argue, remain tethered to our curiosity or led by it, while keeping that survival as a, you need certain survival tools there just to keep living, to keep being curious.
I think that's true.
I had some questions from Simmons.
Yeah.
He
Question.
said, All right. He said to ask you, how similar was your life coming up to the main character in The Devil Thinks I'm Pretty? And how similar was your professional life as a professor to the main character in Violent Faculties?
Oh, both. Yeah.
Very
Um,
similar.
very similar. Yeah. Um,
Hairless red, Rugers for hands. What did you say the name of this school was that you came?
I added in the killing parts. But yeah, I came up uh poor and I was living in the trailer park with my mom for high school after her third divorce and working at the restaurant at the end of the block, just trying to pay bills and eat food. And yeah, a lot of that up until the point where everybody dies is just things that happened that I wrote down. And then I added in the devil
You sure
and
you
a bunch
added
of
it in there?
violence. Uh, so yeah, from there I got a bunch of student loans, ran off to university, took university for 11 years, kept working various jobs. Um, and I was the assistant manager of a tattoo shop when I got the word from the university down in Indiana that they wanted me to come down for a 1 year contract.
Nice.
It was up
That's
sweet.
that's an interesting
Put on the
position.
song, Indiana Wants Me. And then, yeah, I kept working till like 2 days before I was supposed to start because I just needed the cash. And I drove down to Indiana in a compact rental car and an air mattress and started making money as a professor. Not a lot of money, like they started me at 45K. Um, yeah, and then 3 years into that job, they cut the department and 6 years later, I ended up back in Canada. So yeah, I was there. I was there both times, is the answer to that question.
Hmm.
I, in the trailer
I,
park, I was at the university when they cut us.
from a this is a storytelling question because you seem to inject, or by your own admission, you inject a lot of experience into the narrator. What so I guess how is do you consciously hold in your head the uh level of importance, like the balance between authenticity to this story versus maybe your own set of beliefs? You know, if it has to go here and that's away from your experience, from your ideals, from wherever,
Yeah,
then how hard is that for you, or how do you navigate that?
I got better at it. I got better at it over time. So I had a completely other book about a teen girl in the trailer park, and it was much more authentic, but a little bit more uh, whiny. And yeah, and after reading it over, it's like I just don't like this as a book. I'm gonna start again, and we're gonna add some elements of the fantastic, and we're gonna add a bit of the old ultra violence, and see if we can't like work through the same shit I'm trying to work through, but in a book that is actually fun to read. Um, which is yeah, yeah, I did it better the second time, I think. And
I think that's key, wanting it to be fun to read, or at least readable, even if fun isn't your goal,
yeah,
you want it to be a good read.
yeah, right. It's gotta it's gotta do something. It can't be like just masturbation. It's gotta you gotta consider the other end at some point, like the person who's gonna read this. What are they gonna think?
And that tone is really important too, like the uh once you throw it out there, you know you're not judging yourself, like you know yourself, so you're not really judging the how it's coming across. Then you step back and read it a little bit, you're like, oh, I sound like I complain a lot. I know I have plenty to complain about. I'm justified, but damn, this
Wants
is
to read that. It's like, I don't want to hang around complain all the time, and I don't want to read their stupid books either. But yeah, so I think that I will go wherever the story needs to go. And I love the fact that I can always, if I want to, I can just hide and say, this is all fiction. This is all fiction. I made it all up. It's a novel, says so on the book. Like, don't fucking worry about it.
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, people will judge you as a human if they think that this book is a little too close to your actual life. Like Simmons says, everybody in that book is an asshole.
Like,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
everybody, huh? Every-
that mean I'm an asshole? Probably. Um, but
his
I'm not gonna, you know, use that as a brand.
his other question here was how has your experience with men impacted your writing? Because you write just the most despicable men, but you can't be mad because it's so real. Because you either know a boy like the ones she writes, and if you don't, then you are that boy that she writes about.
Oh man, I didn't pick the best men for a long time. And yeah, and I like Ma also had trouble with the menfolk and just kind of grew up with this like horrible vision of what men are and can be, which is completely justified when you meet some of them. But then when the world gets bigger and you meet a bunch of other people, and it's like, okay, I wouldn't have had any bad experiences with men unless I was in relationships with them because I loved them. So it's like I love men, and that kind of sucks sometimes. Um, but yeah, I was actually I didn't have a lot of women friends growing up. I was always around the men folk. So I guess that gives me a lot of opportunities to have bad experiences. And maybe I focus on that in the writing because it is a way of like getting that shit out of your brain.
I think you and Elle both depict men in uh a very true kind of way, and not this and it is often an ugly way, but it's like this honest form of ugliness, not this it's just ugly in in the way that, you know, your car gets dirty when you drive it through the mud. Um it's not like you're taking the mud where it wasn't, and then or taking the mud from someplace and then putting it where it wasn't. It's actually going there, and along the way, you know, you'll have that, you'll depict this very um honest portrait of your male characters uh in a way that too, because in like reading well the way Simmons talks about your books and a lot of the characters in your books, and then I when we were preparing to talk Deliver Me with Elle, I read through some reviews on that, and a lot of people were talking about the critique of the toxic masculinity, and I was like, I related to that dude like a whole lot. Like, what does that say? Everybody's like this scumbag. I was like, I feel represented here a little bit. Not the weird bug sex shit, but I mean, uh, but I think the way that philosophy is important in, you know, the realm of academia, just in the human experience, you know, the allowance to think deeply and ponder all these kind of higher questions. I think that men just the way, and this might be exclusive to, I think men and women probably have their own exclusive modes of experience, but like men grow up wrestling with sort of the sick parts of themselves because we're kind of slow. We see our dads doing shit and we hate them for, and our mode of trying to be better, our tactic for being better than our dads is to be exactly like them.
Mhm.
So it's like, let me do this exact same thing, but it's going to be better this time. And so I think it's important for the depiction of men to be just an honest one, not a constant critique, which is my other beef with modern literature. Is it's so anti-male, everything's a a commentary on toxic masculinity. It's like, you could just have a commentary on masculinity. We could just
Yeah.
depict that with all its flaws and all.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, the critique that I'm risking is someone's going to say, well, this is not fair. It's not fair. It's always negative. You're saying all this bad shit. But it's not like supposed to be a critique. It's like I feel like I know what men are like when they're like in their worst element. And I feel like that's a special privileged kind of knowledge that I have access to, that I can describe. And yeah, I don't know, it's not anti-man, but I mean the women in my books aren't very good either. There's a lot of killing going down. And they think terrible thoughts and they do terrible things. And I don't know. The gender POV, the point of view, it changes the flavor a little bit. Like I have a book from the male POV, and that was Musos, and he was like a terrible man and a murderer. And there's a graphic sexual assault in that book, and like the publisher was a little uncomfortable with that to start. And I made this argument. It's like, but that's because of the genders of these characters. It's because precisely it's male POV. Like I have written much worse things from the female perspective, and apparently that's fine. Um, and they were like, "Yeah, you're right. Actually, um, we'll just put a little warning on the website. No worries." Um, but yeah, we all have our ways of being shitty.
For sure. No, I uh like I said, I really appreciate the way that you depict all characters. It's not a bullet pointed like a scale thing where it's like, let me make sure I'm being fair to the women here. Let me make sure I'm depicting the guys in this light. I have a character who's a hey, he's a guy and he's great. He's flawless. Well, then he's not human. That's not balancing the story out. That's everybody's kind of shitty.
Right? And I want to know about the worst parts of people. I want to know about those depths of despair that lead people to do terrible things. And like one of the things that, because I write women a lot, that comes out is the woman predator also has to be a victim at the same time. And that doesn't seem to be a courtesy that we grant to the male predators as well, even though that's absolutely fucking true if you met them.
Hmm.
Mm. Um, so, mhm.
Well, we used to have that in sitcoms in the 90s. You'd find out that the school bully was some homeless kid with a kid of his own living in a drawer or something.
But that doesn't excuse his behavior. Uh,
do you feel kind of a responsibility in your writing, since you said that you have this privileged knowledge? Um, is that something you recognize just to make you a sharper writer, a better storyteller, or is that one of the things that you like feel that writing is partly a responsibility? Like if you have certain experiences, those are kind and certain knowledge, those are kind of the things that you need to be exploring with your stories.
hmm. I'd say on the whole, I feel very little responsibility. Like I don't want to do anything for it because I feel obligated. That doesn't sound like fun.
No.
But like as a person, I know I like reading shit that tells me something I didn't know. That, provides me access to somebody's experience that I could not have from my own vantage point. And maybe it turns out people relate to that because they haven't seen it expressed in quite the same way before. And like I know when I recognize like something familiar in a text, like that's gonna grab me too. But mostly when I go dark, it's just because something's bothering me. And I find that writing it down allows me to stop dwelling on that thing. But
That
I fucking love the fact that I can write like hardcore brutal dick mutilation stories and publish
uh-huh.
them. The men come back at me on the internet and they're like, this is great. Fucking love this dick mutilation story. It's so feminist. You know, it makes all the arguments it's supposed to make. Mhm.
that brings me to, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I think a perfect final question might also stir some controversy. But uh, do you think horror has to have a point? Because you're obvious, as testament to all the things we've talked about here, your work incites a lot of conversation, and your work is dick mutilation, chopping people up, fucking massacres, the devil. Like it's brutal. Do you think horror has to have a point?
Mm. I know I like it better if it does have one. It doesn't have to be a complicated point, but I mean, I'm just thinking about shock for shock value stories that I don't like. Like you can have the same elements of violence and chopping people up without a point, and it doesn't do anything for me.
Hmm. Me either.
I find it shocking. It's like a, but yeah, I don't know if, but I don't know if that agrees with my experience either, because when I set out to write something, I don't have a point. It's like maybe there's a point that can be gleaned by this by the time I get to the end, but it's not like I start with a point and try to write it out.
Well, yeah, those are always the worst books that start with a theme in mind, and you can tell the whole time that they're kind of they come across didactic and uh but there's certain people I think who hold in their subconscious a different intent, that and if that intent is never just I can't wait to make people think this is gross, even if they don't know the full intent, even if they're just exploring,
Right.
they don't know, they don't have a specific thing to say necessarily, not from the beginning, or maybe not at all, but they're drawn by something more than just uh this is going to be disgusting,
Yeah.
then
Or maybe I read too much Sod as a teenager. It's just like, this is what books are like. I don't know. Do you have a point when you write something?
No, never.
Never ever.
Um, no, I just don't. When I feel like I have a point to make, um, I feel like I could just say it,
Yeah.
and then I don't have a story, and then I'm like, well, why would I write a story? Why would I go through, trying to? Uh, I think a point is somewhere underneath it all, and the story is like what you're trying to dig through to get to it to find it, and you don't know what's under there.
Okay. All right. Maybe when I say point, I don't mean a point like that. Because you're right. When I make a point, I will like say it. Or like that's the point of a philosophy paper. Like if I want to say something that's true, that's how I'll write it. But if I'm gonna write something like fiction, it's because like there's a feeling or a vibe and I want to make other people feel it.
Mm, okay, if that's yeah, if that can be considered a point, then about every time I do set out to create a specific vibe. Like this, I want this to feel depressing. I want this to feel like this song, like Say My Name by Destiny's Child. I want to write the literature equivalent of that.
Yeah.
So the yeah, those type of points for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, it's that kind of point. Like I remember writing the Devil book. It's like I don't want to just kill all these people. I want to make you love them first. So it hurts more.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah. I like I don't know if he had this at the beginning or if it just came out at the end, but Mike says a lot about Itchy the Killer, that it's a love story.
I don't,
And
is it?
I think it is. I think it is. And it is also full of sadomasochistic um violence back and forth.
Yeah.
It's a cat and mouse torture story that is an exploration of what love is.
Okay. If I were writing that, there would be no point. It would just be like, this is how it is. Like, this is the story of the relationship and how it went. Yeah.
oh, 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 damn. What just happened? Oh, and we're back.
Nothing happened
Oh,
here.
nothing happened. Okay, good, good.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you? Find your work? Where do you want to steer them to?
I've got all my book covers on my website at charleneelsby.com. They can click on them and go to the publisher's websites. Twitter, Instagram. That's where I'm at.
Oh, yes. I've been preaching websites. I've been telling everybody they need to get a website so
They need
that
a contact button. I get the best and weirdest shit through that contact button.
I'm being translated into Polish because of the contact button. It's
That's fine.
just, you never know who's out there looking for you. People want to, give them an easy way to reach out.
Yeah.
Well, hell yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. I've very much enjoyed this conversation,
I had a lot of fun.
and I'm glad. Really dug Violent Faculties. I'm going to be taking a deep dive, just like the rest of the Broken River boys. I'm going to be diving into all your work now. Uh, Thank you so much.
Thank you.